Okay. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilma, rabbi irzuqni ilma. Allahumma aril haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'a wa aril batila batilan warzuqna ijtinaba. Wa tawakkal 'ala wa kafa billahi wakila. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanallah al-azim. I feel like this may be the most magical of sessions thus far, which is why the resistance and even wanting to do it, because it is not something that is to be talked about. It is something to be reflected upon and also to be experienced, which hopefully is what we're going to be doing in this session as well. Because in the construct of Iman, in the construct of faith, Iman is nothing without action, without amal. Iman and amal go together. So वो जो ईमान लाए और जिन्होंने हक की बात की, या जो वो जो ईमान लाए और उन्होंने सीधा रास्ता अख्तियार किया. So whatever that haq feels like, it is a belief system which is put into action. Without the action, the belief system does not work, is not sustainable. So faith has, in the construct of this faith, there is no faith without amal. And in the deeper level of faith, which is Sufism, and again, it's a title because it's easy for us to understand, but even if we take this title out and we just feel into the haq of it, as a deeper level of faith, what is shared is that ईमान के अंदर ही इल्म है और इल्म के अंदर ही अमल है. In fact, अमल के बगैर इल्म पॉसिबल नहीं है. In the deeper level of faith, without amal, you cannot know. Without amal, there is no ilm. And iman carries both amal and ilm. And so to read Quran, to know Quran, to understand Quran is a limited way, because without experiencing Quran, we're not fully doing justice to the ocean that we're swimming in. When we begin to recite Quran, we've stepped into a swimming pool. When we begin to read the translation and understand Quran, we have expanded that pool into a lake. Then we begin to reflect upon the verses, and those become a river. And then we begin to experience and tune into the verses, and it becomes the sea. And you'll notice that because Quran is alive and it has been spoken of, wo ek zinda, Quran zinda hai. It is alive. It has a heartbeat. It has a heartbeat. It has a vibration, has a frequency which is relevant and haq till the end of time. Because Quran is alive, it'll always interact with you. It will always respond to you. And sometimes, if you are a seeker, it can also activate you. And in this realm of amal and ilm, where these two are inseparable, there are 3 stages of ilm, which is the 3 stages in which Quran maybe dove into. The first one is ilmul yaqeen. And these are the 4 stages of faith as well, right? 3 stages of faith as well. The first one is ilmul yaqeen. You know of faith. You have knowledge of it. You have read about it. You have understood the basic tenets of it. You can identify it. You can name that sea. You know what that water, so when you can name the sea, you know where it lies, you know how it came to be, you know what its benefits are, you know the boats which have traveled in that sea, you know the kind of storms that typically come over that sea, you know the behavior of the sea, from having studied its behavior over centuries. That's ilmul yaqeen. It's the knowledge of faith. And again, these are again stages, not from a ladder perspective, just stages. Doesn't mean that one is lower or one is higher. But the thing is, there are stages. Just tune into that for a moment. There are stages to it. And that's the beautiful and the stages, and we'll talk about this, the stages, not only are there stages, the stages are also cyclical. So when we first begin from ilmul yaqeen, the second one is ainul yaqeen. You begin to see it. So when you begin to know of your faith, you begin to see it being manifest in your life. Your faith, when we talk about the ayah of Allah, are not in Quran. The ayah of Allah is the universe that you've been born into. So when you begin to have a deep knowledge of what faith is, then you begin to see that knowledge play out in the flight of the bird. You begin to see that knowledge play out in the growth of a tree. You begin to see that knowledge play out in the fall of the rain. You begin to see that knowledge play out in the way the bird stretches their wings across the sky. You see that knowledge play out in the way that people are now just now tapping into this multiple orbits of the way the stars and the planets are created and are being sustained on their own paths. So we begin to see ainul yaqeen, we begin to see the faith being made manifest in the smallest parts in the universe around us, and in the smallest and the biggest parts in the universe within us. We see the faith ainul yaqeen humne observe karte hain, because when we tell stories of other people who have made it through really, really tough times, and the miracles that they speak of, the miracles that they then share, how the synchronicities that they share, but synchronicity and the miracles which inspire us, it's still ainul yaqeen. And it's not, it's still ainul yaqeen. Like we can see even in our own lives, if we begin to experience synchronicities, like for example, we get really excited with like the number synchronicities coming in, or if we are tuned into a certain number and that keeps showing up everywhere, whether it's on our clocks, on the pages of our books, or, oh, I was just thinking and they called. This is still not an experience. This is still ainul yaqeen. You're being a witness. You see, you're being a witness to the sea in this moment. You're being a witness to your faith in this moment, which is an essential part of faith, the knowledge of faith. Allah Ta'ala loves people of knowledge. In fact, the only people that He's spoken of consistently, which have nothing to do with moments. So Allah Ta'ala talks about people of Iman, and then He talks about people not of Iman, right? So He has the 3 or 4 major themes which come up in Quran. So people of Iman, then hypocrites come up, Bani Israel comes up, people who have rejected consistently come up, and then another kind of category of people come up, wise people. And not even wise people like a big thing of, because wisdom also carries a bit of like pressure to it, but people who think. ततफक्करून, do you like फिक्र करो, people who think, people who reflect, तदब्बर जो करते हैं, जो depth में जाके सोचते हैं कि ये है क्या, ये मामला क्या है. Allah Ta'ala really likes those people, and those people have nothing to do with moment on moment. They're just people who reflect, people who like to go deep, people who just like, the philosophers. Allah loves artists. So Allah loves artists and philosophers and scientists and musicians and artists and poets. Oh my God, Allah loves all of these people because they are channeling the depth of the universe. And when they do that, then comes the third stage and the third part of faith, which is haqqul yaqeen. Experience it. Dive into that sea. Do not stand on its shore anymore. Do not just know about the sea. Do not just stand on its shore and reflect on the beauty and the power of the sea. And yes, we may allow the waves to lap around on our feet, and we may allow the texture of the sand to be felt deeply. We may sit on that shore every day and reflect on the magnificence of Allah, but then there comes a time when you're asked to walk into the sea, and that is haqqul yaqeen. And Quran in the same way has been designed, because Quran is a frequency of, it's the faith frequency. It's the ultimate highest vibrational faith frequency, trust frequency. Faith is still adapted. Trust is inborn, is innate. It's a trust frequency. So Quran as a trust frequency is designed to be experienced, not just designed to be read or stood a witness upon, but to be experienced, to be dove into. It is that frequency. It is not a book. If it were a book, it did not need to have been preserved in Lohe Mahfuz till the end of time. If it were just a book, what was the big deal? If it were just a book, why would it have taken, oh my God, since the beginning of time for the earth to be prepared for its arrival? If it were just a book, and then if it were just a book, how can it be so universally relevant that it will be relevant across all dimensions? Rabbul Alameen. It will be relevant across all dimensions and in between dimensions from the beginning till the end of time. Why the beginning of time? It has always been Lohe Mahfuz. This has always been in Lohe Mahfuz since the beginning of time, and it's relevant till the end of time. And even at the end of time, it stands witness and shows up as, oh, subhanallah, look into the depth of all the ahadith we've been talked about, we've known about, which is at the time of Hisab, in the time when you just transitioned, there are surahs of Quran which will show up for you. So there is an enul yaqeen, there is a witness part to this faith until that faith begins to stand witness over you, which is when Surah Mulk shows up for you. There is a time for you to stand witness over faith, but what you are standing witness over, you're just not reciting Surah Mulk. Look into the depth. Hadith is all about multidimensional nature of Quran. Hadith is all about, do not even be fooled into believing that you're reading words. Hadith is all about how have they spoken of Surah Mulk. Surah Mulk will show up as a person, acting as a barrier between you and the questioning angel who is going to ask you questions. Do not question. He's with me. She's with me. He's mine. Surah Mulk will show up as intervene on your behalf at the time of your questioning when you transition, which is the portal, which is called Qabr. So in that exit from this portal onto the next, in this entry exit point where, we're going through the immigration offices, there is a VIP protocol person who shows up, which is Surah Mulk. Look at so Quran is to be, when we are reciting Surah Mulk, just one example, when we are reciting Surah Mulk, we are not reciting Surah Mulk. We are tuning into an established, strongly held, strong frequency of that particular surah. And that frequency is designed to be of benefit to you in a specific, beautiful way. The same way, why is Quran called the remedy to every kind of disease? Because all diseases begin from the soul, diseases of the soul, diseases of the heart, and because it ultimately goes onto the body. How does cancer remission happen? Because of Surah Rahman, or due to Surah Rahman, or any or due to Ruqya, or any ayah of Surah of the Quran. How does it happen? Because it is designed to be, it is a remedy. It is the same way that we go to doctors for a specific kind of ailments, and they give us prescriptions and medicines. Each ayah, forget surah, each word, each ayah of Quran is designed to be a Panadol or Polyfax or whatever, like anti-allergy. Every ayah has been designed because it has been designed for the multidimensional soul, and it speaks directly to it. And what is so beautiful about the fact is that the mysteries that has been spoken of in Surah, in Quran, the mysteries, some have been unveiled, and one that has not still been unveiled, which is the nature of Allah. Who is Allah? And it is one of the most enduring mysteries, in fact, which is, let me pull this up. Because now look at, this is Surah 24, Surah 24, Ayah 35. And Allah speaks of himself. And I just want you to feel into it. Allah speaks of himself and says, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. And the similitude of his light is as a niche wherein is a lamp. The lamp is in a glass. The glass is as it were a shining star. This lamp is kindled from a blessed tree, an olive neither of the east nor the west. whose oil would almost glow forth of itself, though no fire has touched it. There is no flame beneath that oil, but it glows. And the reason why it's so difficult for people to learn Arabic, because it is such a deep language where one root word could have 72 different words originating in each of those 72 different words would have nothing to do with the first one based on the intonation and the emphasis. It is a language designed in depths. It's a language designed in layers, subhanallah. It's a language when some of the very few ayahs that I want us to go through in this moment, just to be able to bring this aspect of when Allah Ta'ala speaks of a simple ayah, like when the eyes are reading an ayah, when we're rushing through it and we're just standing witness upon them, we're not really allowing ourselves to experience it. Because the same ayah, which we read almost like a habit, have held mysteries, and they're called the miracles and the mysteries of the Quran, have held mysteries within them, which are now in last century only have begun to unfold in terms of science. And Allah Ta'ala has spoken of it very easily. So just for some who's reading it, as he speaks of in Surah Az-Zariyat, which is Ayah 47, it is he who we, and it is we who have constricted the heaven with might, and it is we who are steadily expanding it. We had no concept of the fact the space was expanding. And this is right now, I'm just only talking about the physical nature of how there are clues given to how these ayahs are not just words for you to feel back into your faith, but these ayahs are clues for you to look at how this entire system is designed and for you to feel into it so that you may also be able to apply it to your own experience. So how this applies to our experience when we understand that there's the space is steadily expanding in all times, how we apply it to a deeply personal experience, which is all we can do as human beings, is that when we know that we're not meant to be stationary. We know that we're not meant to be stationary. We know that we're not meant to be fixed in one orbit, in one peg, and stay that way. We know that we're meant to expand, and we know what expansion feels like for ourselves as well. So when Allah Ta'ala says, it is we who have constructed the heaven with might, and verily it is we who are steadily expanding it, in the dark times of my life, what he's speaking to me is whatever the stretching feels like for you in this moment, however uncomfortable the stretching feels like for you in this moment, you know that it's happening for you, for your expansion, the same way that the space is expanding for its own benefit in the hikmat of Allah. And again, in the second point, when Allah Ta'ala speaks of the planetary motion, and he speaks of it in Surah Anbiya, it is he who created the night and the day and the sun and the moon. They swim along each in an orbit by the sky full of paths and orbit, which is Surah Az-Zariyat again. The fact that each place, each thing in our life, these are not just ayah, beautiful reminders how each thing in our life has its place, no matter how out of place it seems like in this moment, no matter how unfit it feels like it should not be here in this moment, but it is there because this is its assigned orbit in this moment, the same way the planets and stars have been assigned their orbits, the same way every moment in my life has been assigned these orbits, every moment. And that means that I cannot challenge, and that means that I cannot resist, and that means I cannot not surrender to the fact that this is done perfectly by the same Allah who has designed these entire orbits in perfection, all the entire system in perfection. And again, Allah Ta'ala, the third part, Allah Ta'ala speaks of the protective capabilities of the skies. We made the sky, this is Surah Anbiya again, we made the sky a preserved and protected roof, yet still they turn away from our signs. Subhanallah. And in ways that we are just beginning to understand, have just very recently begun to understand, this canopy over our head is designed to protect us from spaces and from forces seen and unseen. Just now we have begun to understand the entire idea of radiation and UV light. But before that, before that, also in Surah Mulk, it's not just about the physical nature of how this canopy protects us. It's about how this entire world is holding, feel into it. We know the world is holding a certain vibration. We hold a certain vibration, and beyond this roof are other vibrations. And the fact that there's a protected space by Allah Ta'ala's izn, we do not know if we'll be able to withstand the vibration of other multidimensional universes. And so, until we are not ready, the communication will not be made, intrusion will not happen. We have to allow the communication to come in from beyond this protected roof, but it will not come in on its own because it's protected by Allah. Like the depths with which we work when we look at, and these depths are not something that we're making up. Subhanallah, in Surah Kahf, which is ayah 60, which is, and we've for some of us who are familiar with it, because we maybe have recited it often on Fridays, inshallah. But so Hazrat Musa is asked to make a journey, and we all love Hazrat Musa because he's impatient, as are all of us, like completely, like he resonates the deepest parts of me. He's impatient, and he does not believe in like things. He does not believe in wisdom and just believing in the wisdom. He wants to understand things, and so he's asked to make a journey. And in ayah 60, that journey looks like he's asked to go to that certain point. I will journey on until I reach the point where the two rivers meet. Though I may march on for ages. I really want us to feel into the two rivers meet. So there is a physical, of course, there is an ilmul yaqeen and an enul yaqeen part of it. Of course it is. But subhanallah, there is a river, there is a physical place where the two rivers meet, but there is a barrier, Allah Ta'ala says, that I've kept between them, so that they will never merge. And look what happens, and I want us to again look what happens in the place where the two rivers meet. The dead fish that they had left there by mistake come to life and gone into I don't know if they'd left it, but dead fish come to life and go into the river. Dead fish come to life. Now pause for a moment. In a physical space, there is a place where two rivers meet. And how they remember that they'd crossed that space is because they remembered noticing that the dead fish had come to life and then gone into those rivers. And when you feel into the experience of a place where two rivers meet, it is the state of all of our hearts. It is the state of all of our hearts. It is the scene as two seas of creation, of life and creation. The sea of spirituality and materialism, the sea of imagination and reality, the sea of unseen and seen, the sea of haq and batil, true and false. When Allah Ta'ala speaks of the two rivers meeting, He never just speaks of the two rivers meeting. What He's telling us that there is a state of the heart that is accessible to us, which is where the first step of wisdom begins, which is where the first part of Haqqul Yaqeen begins, where we begin to see the two rivers as two rivers. We begin to see through the illusion, we begin to see that there is a parda between seen and unseen. There is a difference between reality and illusion. We begin to see there is a between true and false. We begin to see there is a difference between imagination and reality. The state of the heart that we arrive at, this state of the heart, when we begin to see things as they are and not how we want them to be, where the two rivers meet of our humanity and our divinity, where two rivers meet, where we begin to understand who we actually are. How and why did the fish come alive there? What is the fish? The fish is our heart. Our hearts begin to come alive. Our hearts begin to revive. The tired hearts, the broken hearts, the hard hearts, the lost hearts, the hearts in despair, the hearts who'd given up, begin to come alive when we begin to understand that this reality is not all that we've been taught, and what we've believed it to be. The two rivers meet is a point of our life, and usually it comes at the age of 40. For some, though, again in Surah Kahf, it's the youth for whom that stage came when they were still in their teens and they asked for refuge in the cave, subhanallah. So there is no limit to it, but there is a place within yourself where the two rivers meet, where you finally begin to understand who you are and what this reality is and what the illusion is. And subhanallah, look at Allah Ta'ala says they do not merge. Allah Ta'ala says, I've placed a barrier between them. In the same Quran, Allah Ta'ala says, I've placed a barrier. Your river, you will be able to see it, but you will never be able to, never be able to. Once you see it, you will never be able to mix and merge truth and falsehood. You will never be able to mix them again. It's not a place where two rivers merge. It's a place where two rivers meet. And this delicate place, this delicate, beautiful place, is the place where the dead fish come to life, where our hearts are revived, where our hearts have the opportunity to come back to life. Just in this one ayah. Just in this one ayah. And another example, I'm just going to be taking you through these disparate, what may feel like disparate examples scattered throughout Quran, but look at this. So this is Surah Dhariyat, or Zariyat is how I would say it, but Dhariyat from the Arabic perspective. It means the winnowing winds. It means the winnowing winds. And before we begin to understand what winnowing winds is, or maybe that's what we should be doing. So winnowing is a process by which chaff is separated from grain. It is also used to remove pests from stored grain. It usually falls threshing in grain preparation. The simplest form, it involves throwing it in the air, and as the wind blows away, the lighter stuff goes away while the heavier grain falls back for recovery. That's what winnowing means. And this surah is called the Winnowing Winds. And you know what this surah is about? It talks of Hazrat Ibrahim. It talks of Hazrat Noah, Hazrat Nuh. It talks of the Day of Judgment. And it reiterates the essential Quranic message. Experience the depth of it with Hazrat Ibrahim of the Winnowing Winds, where he was born in idol worshipping, his father, in a place where he was the lonely one, the only one out of the fold, the only one not fitting in. And he decided to stand up. And in his being who he was, he acted as the winnowing wind for separating the truth from falsehood at that time. Tune into the winnowing wind of Hazrat Nuh. For 900 years he preached. And all who listened to him were the poor people. And all who mocked him were the elite. And the all who ostracized him were the elite, saying that you do not, you've come to take away our comfort. And you will be made an example of, and we will drive you out of town, and we will eliminate all your signs from this town, take you, yourself and your poor people, and get out of town. Or if you want us to believe in you, then leave your poor people, because we don't like believing in the same thing that these poor people and these like dirty looking people believe in. And in him being asked to step on that boat with the few that he had with him, he had tapped into the frequency of the winnowing wind. And then the ultimate wind, which is on the Day of Judgment, subhanallah, where the light will be separated from the heavy. All of these are just covered, the specific themes covered in Surah Dhariyat, which is the winnowing winds. It is never just a name of a surah. It is never just an ayah that's written. It is an experience in the way that we can, and then the reiteration of the message of Quran, Subhanallah, which is what? Which is know who you are, know who your Rabb is, and stand by it. Stand by it so that you may be separated, or you may be enabled to separate what is light within you. And what is light within us is always a falsehood, it's always the illusion, it's always the bubbles, always the fizz, always the empty tinkle. That's what's light within us. You'll be able to, so you may be able to separate what is light within you from the one that has, which is of substance within you, which is you, which is your soul, which are your choices, which are which is your light, which is your nur. So from the onset, the surah is just called winnowing winds. And you experience what that wind feels like. And now you bring it into your daily life, experience what that wind feels like. Don't those moments, and we've all experienced so many of those moments where, whether we like it or not, what is of benefit to us is separated from what is of harm to us. It is a filtration process that happens in our life. It may look like death, it may look like migration, it may look like a separation, it may look like a loss, it may look like a loss of any sort, of any nature. But what is in fact happening? The winnowing wind is at play. It is separating what is of benefit to you from what that does not serve you. It is a Qiyamah at play. The same winnowing wind that will separate the one who has weight from the ones who do not have weight. The same Qiyamah is being played out in your life right now, in a very small, specific moment, to be able to help you in holding on to what does have weight for you, and for you to be able to release what is weightless already, but you just holding on to it is what's giving it weight. It's never just the winning. It's not just Surah Dhariyat. Look at the themes which are covered in there. Surah Yasin, Subhanallah. And in this moment, this is something that I do with my daughter every morning, which is place your hand on your heart, find your heartbeat. And now say it out loud, but the Yasin has a specific code to it. And when we say it out loud in your own space, I will help us all, including myself, to feel into what the vibration is. So Yasin. Notice the code. We're not clear on, of course, we're not told as to what it stands for, but here's what we do know about Surah Yasin, which is the hadith that Surah Yasin is referred to as the heart of the Quran. And I want us to take a moment to reflect before we go on to the San code of what Surah Yasin talks about. The same way that we explored what Surah Dhariyat talks about, Surah Yasin reiterates God's sovereignty and the existence of resurrection. Subhanallah, the existence of resurrection. And it's called the heart of the Quran. And it reiterates God's sovereignty. And when we say Yasin, notice the coolness. Notice the coolness. We do not know what the frequency is, but we can feel into notice the coolness of E. Notice how also Ya is like before, it's a separation. Ya, what was from what will now be. So Ya is almost like a trumpet blown from a separation between the before and after. So Yasin, for example, is invoked when you are calling upon, for me. And in this moment, my heartbeat is steady, and I'm finding myself being able to speak it with a steadiness. And so for me, Auzubillah minash shaitanir rajeem, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. For me, Yasin is there is a heat in your life. There is a heat in your life. And it's a flame that's been burning for a while. You invoke Ya. Ya immediately separates that flame from what's going to come next. So there is the दरवाजा जो खड़ा हो जाता है, उस दरवाजे के उल्टे हाथ पे पूरी बेशक आग या फ्लेम या whatever that heat wave लगी रही, इस दरवाजे के इस साइड पे कुछ और शुरू होने लगा या, और उस दरवाजे के इस साइड पे ही या सी, खूबसूरत ठंडी हवा. A way for us to revive our hearts. The surah speaks of the resurrection, Allah's power of resurrection. It speaks of Allah's sovereignty. In times when we feel, even during an ordinary work day, when you feel overwhelmed, even with something as simple as too many things to do and too little time, doesn't have to be big dramatic moment in your life. Take a moment to invoke that shield, that I will not call it a shield, to invoke that separation between how you were feeling and what is now to be. Yeah. Separation, see, with your heart, with your hand on your heart. And you feel the coolness of it in your heart. We're just touching upon, just helping you touch upon the depth of this frequency called Quran that we come together to experience together. Yes, that we come together to experience. And here's another experience of Quran, which is the ayah in Quran, which is, I forget which surah. This is Hazrat Nuh ki jo dua hai, which is Rabbi inni maghlooban fantasir. And it is Rabbi inni maghloob, main doob raha hu, fantasir, help me. Maghlooban, I'm overcome. Maghlooban, I am overwhelmed. This is this is an ayah in Quran and also Hazrat Nuh's dua, right? His dua is the ayah in Quran. Rabbi inni maghlooban fantasir. And I want us to, without going into the moment that he called out, which was 900 years of calling people to Tawheed and being mocked at, I want us to, in this moment though, tune into what happened with the people who rejected Hazrat Nuh's call of Tawheed. As a result of this dua, Rabbi inni maghlooban, मैं drown कर रहा हूँ, मैं डूब रहा हूँ, I am overwhelmed, I am overcome, help me. A flood came. The big flood, the great flood, with the winnowing winds that separated those with weight who were on the boat, than those without weight, who were all, it was a beginning of the world anew, the great flood as we know it, with the pairs which were allowed on that ship. So उन्होंने वो दुआ की, रब्बी इन्नी मगलूबन, वो एक feeling थी, एक intense knowing or feeling थी of drowning. and the world started anew. Because as Anu said, I do not know if these people will be able to, I don't know how, like the corruption is so deep here, the roots are so deep. I don't know if they ever be able to revive. Allah Ta'ala is like, "असल में दोबारा से शुरू करते हैं." रब्बी इन्नी मगलूबन फंतसिर, उन्होंने एक दुआ की और वो फ्लड ने दोबारा से दुनिया शुरू की in one way. These signs, which are only ever what ayah are. Ayah is never a verse. जो लोग बात verse नहीं कह सकते आप ayah को. Verse means something that's written. Ayah is actually, it means a sign. Sign does not mean a destination. Sign does not mean the entirety of the story. Sign does not mean, let me tell you where to go. Sign means for, oh traveler, whichever road you decide to take, these are the signs for you. But walk on the road. Quran is only ever, Islam has only ever asked us to experience it. Don't pass judgment on things that you've not experienced, is what it's saying. It's like, so ayah are signs for the travelers, and for each traveler, even when the sign is the same, because the road that we have taken is different. The same ayah will lead us. So if we are at the airport and there are 7 tunnels, and 7 people at the airport decide to take 7 tunnels, and the exit point of each of those tunnels is the same destination. But those 7 people, based on who they are, what their relationship with life is, what the state of their qalb is, how dead the fish is of their heart, and how alive they are, or what they would like to do, they will each make a choice based on which tunnel to travel through. Each of those tunnels will have the exact same ayahs, the exact same signs, the exact same, because Quran is, the frequency is uniform, the frequency is one, exact same. But because you have taken that particular tunnel, that means you are a specific kind of a traveler, because only a specific kind of travelers take those kind of tunnels. And if you've taken that particular tunnel, then that ayah is never just an ayah about this is the place. If you want to go and visit where 2 rivers meet, this is where you turn left. This is not that ayah will still say the place where 2 rivers meet. But what that travel will do instead is that instead of taking another step forward towards going to the place where the 2 rivers meet, they will sit down exactly where they are. And they will begin to look for the rivers within themselves and look for that point of the 2 rivers meeting within themselves. Because all they needed was to know that we are ready for the place where the 2 rivers meet. And that place is always within us. So depending on who we are, when we read Surah Mulk and when we read the ayah on hellfire, depending on which kind of a traveler we are, there is a traveler who will look at the ayah of hellfire and they will fall down in sajda or in astaghfar, because that traveler does not want to be touched by the heat of that fire. Because remember, in hadith also, Allah Ta'ala has spoken very, very clearly through his Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said there is nothing that you will find in those worlds, hell or heaven, that you have not already found here. Those are amplified, multidimensional versions of what you have already experienced here, except for very, very few new things which he has kept to himself. For example, the way when he speaks to us himself in his own voice, and we don't know what his voice is, because when he refers to himself in Quran, he speaks of himself as the light of a lamp, which is in a niche, which is within a glass, which is burning with an oil, which is not of any date palm or any olive palm, because that oil has never touched fire, it just is. So how does that nur? speak air quotes to us? Or how do we experience him? Subhanallah. How do we experience him? In the same way, when that traveler looks at hellfire, ayahs on hellfire, they bow down in prostration because there's fear, and because they know what fire and heat feels like in this world, and they know what the extreme nature of that fire will feel like when you go into the next world. That's not valid. He is that traveler and he is in that tunnel. It's the same ayah. And therefore he will feel it. And therefore it's true for him. And therefore it is. And therefore hell, the same way two rivers meet, is a place as well. Yes, hell is a place as well, physically. It's Haq. And then the other traveler, another one, who knows that they've been able to withstand the hardest physical diseases in this life. But what has truly broken them is heartbreak. What's truly broken them is loss. What's truly broken them is separation from the feeling of love that they've felt for people in their life. And these people understand hell to be very different. These people understand hell to be very different. They don't have a concept of physical pain, you see, because the threshold is already high. For them, the biggest loss is that emotional pain, and the biggest fear is of the emotional pain. And so when these people come across the same ayah in Surah Mulk, they will say, my God, the fact that I can never get out of this moment, that I will be stuck in this moment forever, there is no hope. There is no hope. That is what, and because they've experienced it in this life, they've experienced hopelessness in this life, they've experienced what it feels like being stuck in this moment. For them, that is hell. So it's not the physical fire of hell. It's the being stuck in a moment forever kind of hell. And then there's another traveler who looks at this ayah of Surah Mulk. And yes, they've tuned into the flames, and yes, they tune into the emotional despair also. But what they also tune in the same surah is when hellfire asks, hey, were you not guided? Hey, how did you even end up here? And when they tune into that ayah of Surah Mulk, they don't listen to hellfire. It feels like there is a deep sadness in that fire because unka malik bhi Allah Ta'ala hai, unka creator bhi Allah Ta'ala hai, unko shauk nahi hai. And what this fire represents in this moment for them is my Allah, who's saying, hey, baby, how did you end up here? And we've all had that friend, right? Who we meet after so many years. And maybe they left us when we were at the hilt. Maybe we were like the president of dramatics in some college club, and and we were just getting married and things were amazing. And you meet them and you're a complete wreck. And they were your people, they were your tribe back then, right? As well. But you just haven't met them in a while, and they see you again, and there's a deep sense of, there's a deep empathy, is such a small word. There's a deep river that flows from their heart. It's like, hey, how did you end up here? Tell me. So what you hear instead in that ayah is, hey, how did you end up here? Tell me. And you don't feel fear of the fire in that moment. You feel the sadness of the lighter of the fire. And that's the tunnel we all have access to walk on, where we don't have to enter places. And how do we walk into that tunnel? Because it is an experience that is meant to be experienced in our everyday life. How do we walk that tunnel? By not walking into places from a place of fear anymore. Because the traveler who walks down the tunnel of fear, where the fear of hellfire is difficult, is terrifying for them, or the emotional despair is terrifying for them, because they've already, even like the physical nature is the, the ilmul yaqeen, and then there's the enul yaqeen part of it, like it's all mixing now, and I'm sure they're in between dimensions also. But then the third traveler, which is like, I don't want to enter a tunnel of fear anymore. And how do you enter that tunnel when you go to meet your Rab? Is by not entering tunnels of fear in your everyday life now. You will never, there is nothing you will experience there that you've not ever experienced before. Because what is there? What is there? There is a sum total of all our choices in a very basic way. Because, of course, what I'm taking away is the Raham of Allah completely, and I'm just doing like whole algebra style maths here. Um, so without the X factor, which is Allah's Raham, I'm really leaning into algebra right now. Without the X factor, which is Allah's Raham, otherwise, the there is a sum total of all the choices that we've made here. So while reciting Surah Mulk, what are those ayahs teaching us? What are those ayahs have what those ayahs have the power to activate within us? Is that if you're feeling fear while leaning into the fire of me, when it comes into those ayahs, then stop, pause. Do not read another ayah. Pause. If you're feeling fear while reading that, pause and tune into the exact place where you are burning in your life right now, and notice why you're in that burning place right now. Because if you are feeling fear from hell while reading any ayah of Quran, that means that you are experiencing hell in some level, on some level right now in your life, you see. And so we're asked to do is notice why you are in that place. Notice the fear that's keeping you in that place. And now ask for guidance to help you guide you out of it. And when you ask for that, first you notice, you identify what that moment of fear is. And all you've done is you read about the ayahs on hell, but you know that fear is not a great friend anymore. Why? It doesn't have to be when you can have love. So you're using that to, first of all, pause in the moment, because that fear is only possible if that fear is within you. And that fear can only be within you if you're living a mini hell right now, if you create a mini hell within your life. And the next step after that self-reflection and awareness, the next step is asking for guidance through it. And that means that the last grand finale of this session, that those tunnels, or the 7 tunnels, are never separate from each other. They're not in layers, top, bottom, middle, second, third, fourth. No, they're all interwoven, all interconnected. तो जहां आपने decide किया कि हमने इस tunnel से अब I'm ready to like feel more and exit from places of hell more in my life, you'll notice another ayah that says, something very Allah whatever, right? So you'll find that ayah, and they'll say, and the moment that sign, it's a sign, it's actually a literal sign that will be in that tunnel, because you just received that ayah, but you follow that ayah and you notice that you already changed tunnels. And now when you've already changed tunnels and you come across more ayahs on hellfire, you'll begin to notice that you feel not as scared and more in love, in fact, with the Creator, who does not like to light fires. You become more in love with the Creator, who's telling you about the fire that He has lit, to remind you that you still have the chance to put out the fire that you have lit in your own life. That His fire, even then, even the biggest fire, is still only, hey Madiha, look at this fire and take your eye away to your own fire and see why you have that fire lit, and notice how you don't have to keep it lit anymore, and notice how you can release it. So that fire that He's lit which is meant to be so scary, which it will be for some, is still a gentle guidance back. It's still a gentle guidance back to my now moment in my now life where I am in pain. He is still trying to help me. He is still trying to help me. And I want to speak of this. He's still trying to help me because the reason why hellfire scares us, or the criterion for ending up in hellfire, and that's why Quran is so magnificent, is just so, like, you really have to try really hard to actually be in, depending on which tunnel that you're walking, depending in that place or in that moment or that feeling. Okay. But the reason why that exists anyway is because Allah is not in the business of keeping us in pain. Allah does not like to see us in pain. Allah does not like to see us suffering. Allah does not like, Allah ने कहा है कि आपके सर दर्द तो एक लंबी सी बात है, आपकी एक सुई का आपको कांटा चुभता है, उसके एवज में आपको उसका बैलेंस आउट करता हूँ, बिकॉज मुझे पसंद नहीं है, मुझे पसंद नहीं है, क्योंकि हम उनसे आए हैं. At no point is he lighting fires for the hell of it. At no point. He's only ever doing it. And that's the tunnel that we're asked to walk on now. Walk in and walk through now. Because the fires that we have lit in our life burn way more deeper. Because abhi we can feel with all our senses. And abhi we don't have the blanket access to his veto power, his rahmah. बिकॉज अभी हमारे पास फ्री विल है. उनकी रहमत तब एक्टिवेट होती है जब हमारी फ्री विल खत्म होती है. सुभान अल्लाह. You feel into it? He says never leave them alone, never leave them alone, never ever leave them alone. When they have free will, they have it beautifully, and my rahmah upon them will be multifold. But when they do not have free will, which is when we graduate, which is when we stand in front of him on Qiyamah, then he says, even then, I'm not going to leave you alone. At that point, I'm going to activate my rahmat for you. And you will then understand who I am, not what I am but who I am. Who I am and what I am, both. So the time of lighting fires in our own life is also over, which is why we're not being drawn to Allah by fear of hellfire anymore. There was a time and place for it. Now is not it. Those were our last generations. ये वाली जनरेशन नहीं. और अब हमारी जो अगली वाली जनरेशन आ रही है वो तो 100% ऐसी नहीं है, जिनको आप डरा धमका के आप किसी से कुछ नहीं करा सकते. So what does that ask us to do? To really be mindful of the fires that we've lit in our own homes and in our own lives and within our own hearts, and get into the habit of putting them out. Because we want, and Allah wants us, we want to be able to experience love in this lifetime, as is our divine birthright. We have access to it. And Quran is a beautiful tarot card deck, if you are drawn to that, because you open it, you see which ayah opens for you. You go through the surah of that ayah, a little before, a little after. You kind of explore it more. Then you sit with it, see which emotions it's bringing up for you. See why those emotions are coming up. See what that is representing or reflecting. That's something that's happening in your own life. And sit with that for a while, because then you're being asked to have awareness, and then go back to it for guidance. You don't need to ask people anymore about things, because it speaks to you, because it communicates with you. When you begin to experience it from the intention of that traveler who wants to experience it, it communicates with you. And you actually begin, then you actually don't also have to wait for Allah's voice for Qiyamah, because Quran is Allah. तो जब आपको, जब मैं अभी हम बात कर रहे थे कि हमें वो आवाज आती है अल्लाह ताला की कि हे हाउ डिड यू एंड अप हियर, अब वो आवाज तो नहीं आ रही है ना, बट मेरा दिल भर आया उस आवाज से, बट वो नोइंग है, तो अब वो आवाज तो नहीं है, but there's a presence that I feel of that frequency within my own self. This is how Quran in some moments it's not accessible, like, because हम लोग in moment of receiving नहीं रहते हैं हर वक्त. That's why अगर मैं in moment of receiving it's accessible at all times. But at some moments you tune in directly to Allah's presence, which we can do in all moments also, but through Quran, like specifically here, and you begin to feel the haqq of it. You begin to feel the haqq of it, which is why we're being asked to read like the beautiful, like a constant reminder Surah Kahf every Friday, right? Constant reminder. बिकॉज वो 3 और 4 जो स्टोरीज उसके अंदर नरेट हुई हुई हैं, वो स्टोरीज आर ऑल स्टोरीज ऑफ वेयर टू रिवर्स मीट. दे ऑल स्टोरीज ऑफ वेयर टू रिवर्स मीट, जहां पे ट्रूथ एंड falsehood were separated from each other and dead hearts came back to life. All 4 of them are. Subhanallah. Okay, so Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Thank you for being here.